Hi everyone. I think we're live. I was trying to get on and nothing was working, but I think now it is. So I'll go on anyway. I was on the phone to Jen from Paper Bird and it couldn't get through, and we thought, well, maybe if we're not on the phone, it'll attach, and it seems that that's what it's done. So hello, I'm Alison Lester and I'm here at my home at Nunnagoon North, which is a long way from where Paper Bird books are in Fremantle. But I do come to Fremantle quite a lot, so I feel like I'm a little bit of a local. So hi everyone, and especially hi if you're watching to my great nieces, Emmy and Fia and Liv. Hi kids, nice to see you. This is where I live, and this is why the internet isn't very good, because I'm out in the country. For me, with the coronavirus lockdown, life isn't very different really. I'm just home the way I normally am, working or not working. Usually I'm goofing off a fair bit, riding my horse or going for a walk or seeing what's in the fridge, or looking up stuff on the internet that isn't really very important. But I'm missing my grandchildren. That's the hardest thing, that I can't see my grandkids. And my husband Eddie's been working from home a little bit too, so that's a bit hard for me to get used to having someone around. But here on the table, I've got a very sophisticated thing. I've got the phone on the back of a swiveling chair, so I can move it around a little bit. So here you can see some of my books on the table behind me. But I was going to show you today how I make a book, and I was going to use the painted ponies as an example. This was a book that I did last year, and I've still got all the artwork from it, so I can show you my rough drawings and how it all gets put together. Before I start, I have to answer these questions. M&Ms or Skittles? I only like M&Ms with peanuts in them. I don't like any other sort. Night owl or early bird? I'm a bit of both. I go to bed late and sometimes I get up early. And some nights, if I'm reading a really good book, I don't sleep at all. I just read the book all night until it's morning time. Fly or breathe underwater? Definitely flying, though I do love snorkeling, but when I fly in a plane, I always sit at the window seat, and I love looking out the window and looking at the world below me. And I've had a couple of dreams when I dreamt I was flying, and that was a really beautiful, beautiful thing. Treehouse or cushion fort? Definitely a treehouse. And my favourite bird, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Into my elbow, how was that? My favourite bird, well, I really love the king parrots that are in our gardens. They're these beautiful green and red parrots, and they're very quiet. Sometimes when you're in the garden, they just, you hear a little, and you look around and there's a king parrot sitting like only about a metre from you, and they kind of look with their heads on one side and go, Anyway, I'll start showing you some of the stuff about making the painted ponies. Maybe I'll put it there so you can see it a bit better. So very early on, the first ideas for the book. Oh, here we go. Here's the very first idea for the book. This was a little drawing I did years and years ago. And I used to think about all those different coloured ponies, because horses have lovely names for their colours. There's buckskins and skewballs and pintos and chestnuts and bays. And I started making up a little poem that went the gold palomino, the buckskin, the bay, the pinto, the brown, and the dappley grey. And I started thinking what a lovely rhyme that would be to go into a book. So I started thinking about the sort of book it could be. This is what my work looks like often when I start. I might have done a few sketches, and look, for a whole book there's like just pages and pages of typing and changing and altering. I'll put this down here so I don't get it all mixed up. Very early on in the process, I make what's called a dummy book. And you can see it's pretty close to how the book ended up. There's the cover, and here's my dummy book. And I love the dummy book because it's the same size as the book, and I can really see how things are going to work out. You can also see how long I've spent on the phone by the amount of scribble that's on the cover or on any of the illustrations. So here I've made a rough of what I thought the end papers might be. And I'm a bit sad that when I did the end papers, I didn't put all the names in. I should have put all the horse colours in: palomino, blanketed bay, brown, buckskin, black, chestnut, but I didn't do that. So inside these rough copies is just full of lots and lots of crossing out and changing text and rough drawings. I find I draw best if I draw really, really quickly. The other thing about my drawing is often I draw better if I draw really small. So a drawing like this, I've done little and then I've blown it up on the computer to get it the right size. And some of you might find that with your drawing too, that when you draw, you might love drawing big or you might love drawing little. And if that's the way it is, don't try and fight it, because it's very easy to make things bigger or smaller in this digital age. Here's a couple more rough copies. I'll put them all out of the way. And then here's a big folder that says planning and storyboards. And in that you've probably done storyboards when you've made books too. So these pages big sheets of paper where I lay out all the pages and I say what I'm doing on every page. For each book there's like just lots and lots of them. I won't show them all. And then I often have to do things like this. In this book there's, I think there was 6 or 7 ponies and maybe 7 dogs, and they all had different markings. So I had to make this master sheet where I knew what spots and dots and patches each animal had looking both ways, so I could refer to it when I was painting them and make sure that I didn't muck it up. I'll put this one away. So here we go. Here's the painted ponies. So the first thing, or it wasn't actually the first thing, it was probably the last thing I did for the book, but it's the first thing you see in the book is the cover. And so here's a cover rough where I've been drawing that picture of the little girl riding her pony, standing up on her pony with all the other ponies galloping beside her and the dogs running along and her lasso swirling up in the air. And I wanted the lasso to be where the typeset, so I had to make it right. But it was quite hard. I kept doing drawings, but the little girl was never clear enough in the middle. There was always a horse's tail or something that was interfering with her. And I wanted her to, I'll show you how she ended up on the cover. I wanted her to look like that so you could see her really clearly. So I had to keep drawing these ponies, and I think maybe here you can see that I've started to get it right, where the lasso is swirling around her so that your eye is drawn to her, that she's really the centre of the picture. Here's more of them here. This is an interesting thing. When I draw horses, I always draw them going that way because I'm right-handed, so I draw their heads. If I drew them with going the other way, my hand would cover up what I'm drawing. So I always draw them that way, and then I just flip them. I can trace the back, or I can do it in the computer. Here's more pictures of trying to get it right. You wouldn't believe how many drawings I have to do sometimes to get a drawing right. There's many, many pictures. There it is again. The funny thing is, because I really love it so much, it doesn't ever seem like a pain. It's just like, here we go. There you can see how kind of complicated it is around her, that she doesn't stand out. So that must have been an early picture. And here again, you can see that it's not really quite clear, but you can see now that the designer has started to put the type into the lasso, so I can see what the cover's really going to look like. Oh, I'll stop showing you them. You'll get sick of seeing them. I think this is maybe the final picture. The way I do most of my books, occasionally I do collage or something like that, but I usually draw with pencil. I do a rough copy first, and then I've got a light box, which is like a glass table with a light under it, so I can trace my rough copies and then draw them more carefully. And I love drawing on this fine drawing paper, but you can see it wouldn't be very good to paint on. It's too thin that if you wet this, the paper would just fall apart. So I do that drawing, and then I scan it into my computer, and then I print it out. Then I print it out onto watercolour paper, and you can kind of hear how thick this paper is, that I could put this paper under the tap and it wouldn't fall to pieces. So it's really beautiful to paint on. The other thing I like about it is that I can make some little corrections in the computer, and also my pen turn into a lovely grainy black line. I think this is the final art for the cover of the Painted Ponies, with her thundering along. She's such a brave little rider. And when Sandra, the designer, started putting it together, she made this beautiful font to go in it that looked a little bit like a country and western show. So you can see there, she's given Lucky a red shirt and a blue background. I wasn't crazy about that idea. There's with a heavier blue background. There's with a blue background and pink inside the lariat. So I get lots of choices. This is the lovely stage when I've done my work and the designer goes, what about this? What about this? Would you like this one? Do you like this one? I go, oh, I like this one, but how about that? What do you think? So it's a very collaborative process. And you can see here the beautiful cover that she ended up doing. And you can't see this, but if you feel it, all these, it's called being debossed. So this area is all pushed down. So when you run your hand over the Painted Ponies, you can feel the texture of it. So the next page, here, this is what the end papers look like. This book is dedicated for Winifred, who's my youngest grandchild. Winnie, we call her. She's 2 at the end of the year. And it says in memory of Helen Packer, who was a lovely friend of mine who lived up in the mountains and had lots and lots of horses. And here's the title page, The Painted Ponies. So here you can see me working on the Painted Ponies, sometimes on a little scrap of paper like this, or little scraps like this. And here I'm thinking how it could work. Maybe it could be the little girl with all the ponies just standing around her. So there's the finished drawing, and here's the painting that I did. So I've drawn that and then I've coloured it in. And you can see, just so that it looks so flat, I often put a little purple shadow under things. If you look closely, you can see under that Pinto pony, there's a little purple shadow under her tummy and her neck and her head, so that the animals look a little bit more three-dimensional. So that's a good thing to try if you like painting, to put some shadows in as well. And it always feels a bit scary doing it, but it nearly always makes things look better. I also did a coloured background for that, but we decided not to use it because it was a bit too much. So the book starts off with Matilda. It says, Matilda loved staying at Grandma Lucky's house. There was a pony called Luna, Ginger Cat, Big Dog, and the Painted Ponies. So when I started this book, I had to do a rough copy because we were deciding what sort of paper we were going to print it on. So this was my rough copy that I did. So you see Lucky sitting on the veranda reading a story to Matilda, and the Ginger Cat's having a sleep. And you can't see the pony in that picture or the dog. And the reason they wanted to do that was the publishers wanted to see whether it looked better on a glossy paper like this or a wood-free paper like this, where the colour was a little bit duller. So you can, I don't know if you can see the difference. Pretty subtle. But in the end, we decided to go with this wood-free paper, which had a slightly old-fashioned feel about it, and I really loved the softness of it. So here's a pretty wild first drawing. Pretty scribbly, just getting it all down. Here's a terrible drawing of Lucky. Look, she looks like such an old bag. I had to make her a bit nicer than that. And then here's the printed version on watercolour paper. I had to put a special setting on my printer so that it could print these long sheets. And then here you can see the coloured version. This is the really lovely part of my job, when I've done all the drawing, which is the hard work. Oh, sorry, that noise was just the cat coming in. But once I get to here and I just start painting, it's really, really lovely. Push, push. This is the Ginger Cat. I don't know if she'll come and say hello. She's pretty temperamental. The next page It says the painted ponies were kept in a carved wagon. Inside there was a stall for each one. The gold palomino, the chestnut, the bay, the pinto, the brown and the dappley grey. Why does this pony have a star? Matilda asked Lucky one day, and Lucky told her. So here you can see a really good example of me drawing little. So I've drawn this picture of her playing with the ponies quite small, and then I tried blowing it up big so she could fit on the page like that. And it sort of worked, but in the end I didn't go with that one. I changed her a little bit. And here you can see the drawing that I used to make the picture where Matilda actually looks a little bit different. I like the way that big dog leans on her all the time. And here's the painting of the painted ponies. When I did this, I realised I had the horses out of order. It should be the gold palomino, the chestnut, the bay, the pinto, the brown and the dappley grey. So I had to redraw them, and then the designer dropped them into the picture so that they were in the right order. So it's nice being able to be rescued by digital technology. And then that's just a lovely sheet of pink watercolour that was dropped in behind to make the background. Oh yeah, here are the fill-in horses that I had to do so we could get the order right. I hope this is okay. Anyway, I don't know what you're doing, so if it's a bit boring, you don't have to stay. But I hope you're all having a nice time at home too. Living out here in the country, it's pretty much business as usual, but it must be very hard for people who are living in apartments. And it's very nice that you can be part of this Paperbird book club and see these different things. Here's a really messy rough. You can see I've chopped out some of those dogs and stuck them on. This is when Lucky is explaining about the painted pony. She says, "When I was a little girl, my family had a travelling show. We followed the sun all over the country with our clever animals. There were dogs who could play football, dancing goats, clairvoyant hens, and Hercules, the biggest horse in the world." When I look at this, I always wish these dogs were a bit smaller and not quite so close to the edge. But anyway, I'm always unhappy with something in the books. So here's some early rough drawings of the dogs. They were no good. And then here you can see I've got them right. And then here's the coloured in versions of them. And here's Hercules with the hens on his back. I used to have a beautiful big horse like this called Woollyfoot, so that's how this horse became to be in the story. And then it goes on to say that Mother was a trick rider, so here's some rough copies of Mum doing tricks on the horses and Lucky twirling her lariat. I'll find you something a little bit more interesting than all this stuff. There's too many of them. Oh yeah, this is quite a nice one. So they have their circus, but one summer when they're going over the mountains, they see these wild ponies playing, I guess they're brumbies, playing in the shimmering grass. One summer, as we travelled over the Smoky Mountains, we saw 6 wild ponies playing in the shimmering grass. We saw a gold palomino, a chestnut, a bay, a pinto, a brown, and a dappley grey. And I really based this on the times I've spent riding up on the high plains in Victoria, where you do see brumbies sometimes. So there's a really, really rough. You can see I've drawn over it with lots of different colours when I've been wanting to change things, trying to get it right. And then here's another version where they're kicking up their heels. I think these sort of pencil drawings are my favourite drawings, but they're always just a bit too messy to use in the book, so I need to find a way of being able to do them a little bit tidier. And then here's the coloured picture of the ponies playing in the shimmering grass. And here on the end, you can see there's a little bit of paper that I've stuck on, and I don't know, hang on, I'll put it up this way. So this is little bits of writing that the designer has to drop onto the trucks that are parked over there in the background. their travelling trucks, and it's much easier if they get scanned at the same time as the pictures. So if I stick them on, they're just there for the designer to put in digitally once she gets the files back from the person who makes them. So they talk, they say, on they go, and they can't stop talking about the ponies. She and her mum remember them dancing, and they want to, so this is them travelling all over the country with their show. When I was a little girl, we used to have a local show, and I used to take my pony into it and go in the school pony in different competitions, but I was always very envious of the kids who were the carnival kids who came to our school for the week that they were there, but then they went off travelling all over Australia, and I think that was part of the inspiration for this book too. Here she is, one of her jobs is washing Hercules. When I used to wash Woollyfoot, it was like washing a house. It was such a big job. I used to have to start at one end and keep going till I got to the other. And there she is feeding the hens, the clairvoyant hens, who always know what's going to happen. And here she is trying to get the dogs to do tricks, but they're not being very obedient. And here she is doing her homework. So this is probably what some of you are doing now that you're going to be working from home. You could, on a nice day, you could have a table outside and do your homework under a tree. And here she is going with her mum with the goats. So they go on, and Dad says that they shouldn't catch the ponies, but in the dead of winter, but in the deep of winter, Mother and Uncle Remy returned to the mountains to capture the ponies. When they found them, they weren't dancing anymore. They were huddled together, shivering with cold. I really like that picture. It's nice riding a horse in the snow. It's very silent. Their hooves don't make very much noise. And again, I quite like the black and white rough drawing where it's nice and loose. And then here's the colour version. So it says, when the ponies arrived, I brushed them and combed the tangles out of their manes and tails, the gold palomino, the chestnut, the bay, the pinto, the brown, and the dappley grey. The ponies were clever and calm and easy to train. They soon became part of our show, and I loved them all. The gold palomino took the hens for a ride, as they knew she would. The pinto loved to dance. The bay was a trickster. You can see he's stealing Uncle Remy's hat. The chestnut raced the dogs around the ring. The brown could count. See, Mum's holding up a sign that says 4, and the brown's going tap, 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 tap with her hoof. Did I do 5 or 4? I can't remember. And the dappley grey was mine. She trotted steady and sure as I danced and tumbled on her back. The ponies were a hit. People travelled from far away to see them. I'll see if I can find that picture to show you. Here we go. And here you can see, again, this thing where I've had to do my horse going the other way, so in the end the whole picture is reversed. So I've reversed it before I've coloured it, and now she's going the right way with all the people watching her. I originally had her dressed in a ballet costume doing a jump on her, but this looked much more adventurous, to be doing a handstand and to be wearing jeans. But as summer came, I often saw the ponies looking towards the distant mountains. They loved the show, but they wanted to go home. So she's sitting down with her dad, he's playing his guitar, and she can see the ponies looking towards the mountains. When we reached the foothills of the mountains, the ponies stamped and whinnied in their stalls. I knew what was wrong. That still moonlit night, I crept outside. The ponies were waiting for me. I patted each one, then let down the slip rails. Go, I whispered. As the ponies thundered away, the dust they raised hung in the air like mist. I cried for the gold palomino, the chestnut, the bay, the pinto, the brown and the dappley grey. Her mum looks a little bit cross, but I think her dad understands. Then in the still night I heard the sound of one pony trotting back up the road. Out of the gloom came the dappley grey, my dappley grey. She came back to me. And then the very last picture has no words. You just see Matilda out in the paddock standing on a little grey pony who's got a moon shape on her face, and Lucky is giving her instructions on how to be a trick rider, and you can see all the painted ponies lined up below. And then on the back page we see all the ponies and we get to know their names and the dogs' names too. So the pony, the palomino's called May, the chestnut's called Biscuit, the bay is Tricky, the brown is Albert, the pinto is Cisco, Star is the grey one, and here's Luna down here. And here it says Luna is the granddaughter of Star. So just like Matilda is Lucky's granddaughter, Luna is Star's granddaughter. And the dogs all have names too: Buffy, Rosie, Mavis, Bob, Pants, Patch and Fatty. It says we call the dogs the Yak and Danders because that's where we found them, a litter of puppies in the box on the side of the road. So that's the end of that story. Now, I had something else to show you here. I wonder if it's in a good place or whether I've lost it. Oh, I know what I was going to show you. I was going to show you some experiments. I'm illustrating a book for my friend Janie Godwin, and I haven't illustrated a book for anyone else for a long time. It's called Sing Me the Summer, and it's about the season. So here you can see some of the disastrous experiments I have when I start a book. So here I thought I might be able to do it on this special paper, which is mineral paper, but that didn't work very well. I did some experimenting with the mineral paper and with cutouts on it. That kind of looks interesting, but it's a little bit weird. Oh, here's a really funny one. I tried painting onto little strips of canvas. I thought maybe that might work, but that looked a bit funny too. And here is, in this book, every couple of pages it says, and here is the night. So here's the summer night, the autumn night, the winter night, the spring night, and then it's back to summer. So there's just little rough sketches of me imagining what those pages could look like. And then here's some more experimenting here. I love using watercolour, and you can see the lovely textures that happen when you use rough watercolour paper, because the inks all have heavy pigments and sometimes they settle into the bumps in the paper and you get those beautiful techniques. What I might do now, I'm about to finish. I hope this has been okay. But the reception here isn't very bad, so I've had to be working up in the dining room of our house. But I'll try and take you down to I don't know if I can do a reverso. I'll do a reverso and I'll take you down to my studio so you can see what's happening there. Whoa, don't know. Here we go. This might work. So, bye-bye. That's where I was set up to show you things. Look how lovely the grapevines are looking at this time of year. So down here, if I cut out, goodbye everyone and thanks for listening. But if it works just a little while, you'll be able to see where I do my painting. So this used to just be my studio, but since we've had a whole lot of grandchildren, we've had to put double bunks up one end. So here you can see a shelf with lots and lots of paints and supplies. And here's my painting desk. I love working here. I've got lots and lots of colours in palettes. And often I paint little samples of each colour and I write their name on them. So if I'm looking for a colour, I can get them really easily. I've got brushes and water. I always have some toilet paper in case I need to mop up some water. Oh, this is what I was looking before. Here's a picture from Noni the pony, and here's a picture from Bigsy. So that's a whole different way. This is a nice way of making illustrations, and that's using collage, where you actually stick things on. So you can make beautiful pictures using fabric. This is the desk where I do most of my drawing. So you can see there's a skeleton and various things. This baby Jesus, that picture, he changes his eyes sometimes. I don't think he's going to do it today. All right, I might turn it round and say goodbye, everyone. Thanks for listening. I'm not quite sure how to turn this off, but I hope I'll find it out. Keep reading, keep safe, stay at home, be patient, be good to each other, and keep reading books. Bye-bye.